Yeah, because I think on the left or right, whether you're doing it through tax cuts or you're doing it through spending, if you're taking, or more money is going out than is coming in, that is a problem. Companies can't afford to do that very long, nor our government. But I'm just wondering your own thoughts on what's being kicked around here with the tax cut that's presently on the table. What do you think?
Again, decide the goals. Somebody decided that a lot of tax incentives for education, for healthcare, decide whether those tax incentives were, first of all, how much benefit do people take from them today? What's going to happen tomorrow? And was the purpose to get rid of them? Take a look at what's happening. Who will benefit from this tax cut? You can look at the history, but you have to ask, are we trying to help the middle class? What are we doing for less affluent people? I look at it and I do worry about what will happen with kids and families that grow up poor. Will this hurt those people? I don't have a huge concern, but I have some concern.
But you're also concerned about a balanced budget,
there's a tax,
right? If you balanced budget and we're now 20+ trillion in debt, I'm just wondering, is there any scenario in which you can see that will ever, not only attain the balanced budget thing, but eventually wipe away our debt? Because that's something that is like a ticking time bomb.
Well, obviously you can just increase tax rates, but I'd point to two or three things. I think some things in the new tax bill in terms of deductions will help. I think it's great to rationalize the corporate tax system, but if you're worried about the budget, we need to not just give shareholders a windfall. We have to make sure that somehow that tax revenue comes back, that, in a sense, we're giving to shareholders by lowering corporate taxes. I think that's important. And at the end of the day, as you look at the numbers, payroll taxes, Neil, are very important. And all of the discussion today and in the press always is about income tax, and yet we have a ceiling of $17,000 on income that gets paid with Social Security taxes. Somebody might need to look at that at some day. That's all from a revenue standpoint. Obviously, there are spending things to look at as well.
They didn't put a ceiling on that. Your Social Security concerns would just melt away here. But I do want to switch gears a little bit, if you don't mind, Stephen. Talk about that. You're an investor in Twitter, and I'm sure you were aware today they've increased their tweet count to 280 characters. But one of the things you said is that you were getting concerned about all of these social media sites that are now responsible for better policing the news that appears on them. You had said, I'm not sure, in this interview with Bloomberg, I believe, I hope I'm quoting correctly, I'm not sure you could say that is Facebook's job. They're not in the news business. They pass along other people's news. Same thing with Google. That's part of the issue here, is things can look authentic. But were you saying there that those companies, maybe Twitter included, bear no responsibility for policing what gets up on their site and passed along as news or information?
No, I wouldn't say there's no responsibility, but it's very difficult to define what the responsibility is. An average American citizen could go on Twitter or Facebook and post something to the effect that, tomorrow there'll be a, earthquake in California. That's fake news. There's no reason to believe it. And yet, being able to distinguish people's ability to randomly express themselves under the First Amendment or otherwise, versus the impact that may come from foreign governments and other sort of more nefarious activities, it's very difficult to do. And so there is a responsibility, but these organizations also they thrive by letting people say what's on their mind. And I think it'll be important for government and the social media industry, if you will, to partner to define what really is the responsibility, what really needs policing. It's clearly not nothing, and it clearly will be a very difficult challenge to first define the policy and then build the technology to implement it.
Do you think enough of this news had an impression on voters, so much so that it tipped the election last year?
Not in my wheelhouse, not smart enough, can't say.
I thought I'd get it by bearing that question deep into the interview, and maybe you would say that. Let me switch gears a little bit to your Los Angeles Clippers on fire, of course. But you did address this issue about athletes who either want to kneel or sit out the national anthem. You had said, to our degree, our players have ways they want to express themselves, they can use any of the tools at their disposal. Some of those tools might be in violation of NBA rules. Some of those tools are not in violation of NBA rules. So what are your rules on this? If any of your players sit out the national anthem, I don't know of any who have, what do you do?
We respect the NBA rules. The NBA rules are what govern in this case. The NBA rules are quite clear about players needing to stand for the national anthem. I support those rules, and yet I think it is a good thing for our players to express themselves and the issues they think are important, because athletes do have a voice that they can use to comment and highlight important social issues.
But if they did that with you, and the NBA rules are what they are, but the NBA rules are what they are, they would be in violation of those rules, and you would have to, I assume, punish them.
Well, there's clear consequences
Sure.
Called out. Everybody understands that. The Players Association has agreed to it. And so it's really, let me call it a rational framework in which players can decide what to do. If somebody wants to go against the rules, they can. There's consequences.
Right.
People respect that. But I do encourage our players to speak out on things they think are important.
Finally, this market run-up that's been incredible, a year since the election of Donald Trump, but it obviously precedes even that, Steve, as you know. Microsoft has benefited, obviously. Apple today with a market value north of $900 billion. Does it ever get nosebleedy for you, or do you find that all these levels, multiples are justified? Not talking about these individual issues, but even looking at NASDAQ and the technology run-up. What do you think?
I don't know. Maybe it's my natural personality. Yeah, it feels a little nosebleedy to me, Neil. It really does. I made a comment, I think, back in about '98 that it felt nosebleedy back then, and I got a lot of guff and feedback negatively on that. And sure enough, by 2000, phew! So I'm sort of beyond the forecasting phase, but things do feel a little nosebleedy, if you will, to me.
I'm going to patent that word. I'm going to patent it.